Hi there, my name is Mr. Chao, and welcome to Chao Time. In this week's episode, I'm back with the Seiko SPB149, the 62MAS reissue. This is the second time it's been reissued. This is my most recent watch purchase, and I've had it for, 3 to 6 months now or so, and I'm ready to give my opinion. So how the reviews work is that I have a rubric that I score the watches on. The rubric is mostly objective categories with one subjective category, and then I take the score from that, I apply a value multiplier. The value multiplier gives me a value score. That allows me to rank the watches in both the rubric, but also by value. If you're interested in how this all works, you can take a look at the video in the top right hand corner. The rubric and also the ranking are available in the description below. After all that, I give my completely subjective opinion based on things like my emotional state, my attachment to the watch, the character of the watch, these types of things that I believe we all think about when we make our watch purchasing decisions. So let's get to it. Before we can begin scoring the watch against the rubric, we first need to understand what the purpose of the watch is, why it exists, and what design language inspires it. Well, the watch is a high-end tool watch. It's not quite luxury, but who honestly needs a $1,000 watch to tell them the time in the water? This will help me frame the review and give the review context. We'll start with the function, feel, and visual appeal of the case and bracelet. Let's start with the bezel, as it's one of the items that brings the score down. The action is okay. It's tight, and even a little bit hard to turn, but the clicks feel mushy and unsatisfying. The coin edge on the bezel aids in getting purchase on the bezel, but they could either be deeper or the bezel could be a touch looser. The clicks are audible, but also a little unsatisfying. I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's hollow or tinny either though. Very hard to describe. The case, bezel insert, and bracelet are all made of stainless steel. The bezel insert is painted, and the rest of the watch has a coating Seiko calls DiaShield. It's similar to a clear PVD, which improves the scratch resistance of the watch. The watch has a variety of finishes, as is standard on Seiko watches. Here's a shot of an off-center bezel pip to distract you from the beautiful finishing. The bezel insert and case top have circular brushing. The case side has straight brushing, and there are these nicely polished bevels. The bracelet also has straight brushing on the top side, whereas the sides are polished. None of the polishing is extremely high quality, but the brushing is fine and even. Moving on to the bracelet, which is another weak point on this watch that keeps it from achieving a higher score. The mid-links do not articulate, making the bracelet slightly less comfortable. It does taper from 20mm to 18mm, which helps the comfort, clawing back some of those points. The fold-over portion of the deployant clasp is loose and rattles. The push button also has poor tolerances, rattling around whenever the wrist moves too much. On the right side, the clasp is signed and has 4 micro adjust holes. The clasp is made of milled steel instead of being stamped like some other Seikos. The clasp has a diver's extension. The end links are solid, but also have subpar tolerance. Overall, an extremely jangly bracelet. The final touch point is the crown, which is well sized and knurled, making it easy to manipulate. It's unsigned. Wah wah. It does have a stepped portion here, just past the knurling, that adds some intricacy to the form. Speaking of the form, the watch is reminiscent of the original 62MAS design. It's faithful to that design, and all lines and angles mesh well, except the end link, which is a strange juxtaposition of angles and finishes. I could go on and on here, but do I need to? I mean, look at it. Okay, I will. Nothing lines up. Not the lug ends, not the case top, nothing. And it doesn't need to if it's trying to show off the boxed area between the lugs. but the end links almost fit every shape and angle so closely that it doesn't create enough relief to adequately showcase it. In the end, it just seems like an afterthought. Like this watch was never designed to have a bracelet, but some accountant said, "We'd make a lot more money if we offered a bracelet option." Anyway, let's move on to the other strap option. It's a thick, blue rubber with some interesting patterns down either side. The spring bar holes are metal lined. It's signed in 3 places: the buckle, the keeper, and the end of the rubber with the tsunami wave. These metal components also have both fine straight brush and polish. Finally, let's flip over to the case back. There's some of your usual information, along with another tsunami wave. The embossing and polish here are nicely done. In the time that the watch has been available, I've not been able to find any major or consistent quality control issues. 7.5 out of 10 for form, 7 out of 10 for function. Let's move on to the dial. Another classically legible showing from the Seiko diver catalog. The dial has a very faint sunburst finish from some angles, and a metallic matte finish from others. The dial is a deep and dark, almost open ocean blue. On the dial are printed minute track and Seiko logos and branding, a diver 200 meter classification, and rectangular and trapezoidal applied indices. The minute track has disappointing gaps, but the text is full, clear, and crisp. There are 2 elements of dark gold, the diver's 200 text and second hand. The other hands have split finishing. The white date window helps maintain symmetry on the dial. The indices have metal surrounds, which are polished, and topped off with a bubble mound of lume. It almost looks like a dessert, a little rectangular cake with sculpted icing on top. It helps give the dial a 3D presence. The lume is pretty long lasting, being fairly legible at 3 AM. It doesn't last as long as some other Seiko divers I've had, but it still lasts long enough. The hands are also well loomed, with an even coat throughout. It's an extremely functional dial, with shapes and angles that work really well with the overall design. 8.5 out of 10 for form, 10 out of 10 for function. Let's move on to that 6R15 movement. If you've seen any of my other watch reviews with this movement, you might want to skip to the next section, because there's no new ground to cover here. The movement is hackable and hand winding. It beats at 21,600 beats per hour and has a date complication. Some of the parts along the date train are made of plastic. It's nothing special to look at, but is robust and reliable, perfect for adventuring in the ocean depths. The movement is notoriously bad at keeping time and is rated at -15 to +25 seconds per day. Many examples run much better than that, as does this particular piece, but I've also had others that were alarmingly bad, swinging wildly from one end of the tolerance to the other on any given day. 4 out of 10 for both form and function. That brings the total objective category score to 41.5 out of 60. That puts it in line with other watches in this price range. So let's get to our last and arguably most subjective category, brand and heritage. I believe the Seiko brand sits just outside of the Swiss giants, such as Rolex and Omega. However, the brand comfortably holds the highest score outside of the luxury Swiss circle. Seiko has a tremendous history dating back to 1881. Seiko has a variety of interesting achievements, such as battering the Swiss brands in their own observatory chronometer trials in the 60s, the invention of the first quartz movement, the spring drive movement, the first titanium dive watch, and the first automatic chronograph. This particular watch is a reissue of Seiko's first dive watch, known as the 62MAS. I, personally, am a huge fan of the Japanese brand. 6.5 out of 10 for history and prestige, bringing the total score to 48 out of 70. The watch was released in 2020 and is currently in production, although this particular reference is a limited edition, and I'm not sure how many new ones are still available from retailers. It retails for around $1,350 USD, and finding one in new condition and cheaper may be difficult. I found this one at an AD, and they charged me $1,200, but I also see them selling on eBay for $1,400 to $1,500. In any case, I think the price of these will come down as Seiko continues releasing special editions, and there are new flavors of the week, so to speak. I used the price I got for this new, which is $1,200. That means the value multiplier will be 1.322 for this watch, and the value score is 63.46 out of 70. So, that brings me to my personal opinion on this watch. First, I really like this case size. I feel like the Seiko Prospex Diver catalog was missing something from the 40mm range, and I'm really glad that Seiko has plugged that hole. I really find the watch to fit me really well. I don't know how well you can see this, but it fits me, and I think it's really comfortable. I really like the design of the watch as well. I think it's really handsome. I love the colors. I love the little pop of yellow on the second hands. I like the color blue on this rubber as well. I really like a lot about the watch. I like that it has a rubber strap option. I don't really love this rattly, tinny bracelet. And I think I've said enough about the bracelet, but I'll just say this. So many of my Seikos, the worst part of the watch is in the bracelet. So that's a little bit unfortunate. I think that the brand makes so many watches that the tolerances are quite loose, and otherwise they would have to bin a lot of their parts. And we've seen some of the quality control issues on this watch. As I was reviewing the watch, I came to realize that the watch was not really scoring as well as I had expected, especially for a watch of this price range. And really what I think is happening is that Seiko is starting to sell at a premium because it's built such a strong brand reputation. It has a strong following in the enthusiast community. I myself have recommended Seikos to people that were getting into watches, and a lot of enthusiasts say that you have to have at least one Seiko in your collection because they just represented such strong value for such a long time. And now I think Seiko is really cashing in on that brand recognition. I believe that this watch, not that many years ago, if they had released it, would have sold for $600 to $800, and it would have destroyed anything else in that price range. And now if you want something that's really strong in that price range, you might be looking at micro brands such as Devosa or Laurier, Yima, Steinhardt, Squale, Helios. And I think at this current price point, from $1,200 to $1,500, you might find better watches from some of the big Swiss companies such as Hamilton or Tag Heuer or Longines. Or you might even find better watches from the higher end of the catalog of those micro brands that I mentioned earlier. And the thing is, it's not that I wouldn't pay more money for a Seiko, as is evidenced by this watch right here. It's just that I wish that as Seiko is raising their prices, that they would step up their watch game. I mean, in this price range, I would be expecting a movement of a slightly higher level of refinement. For example, Seiko used to make watches that beat at 28,800 beats per hour way back in the 70s, even in the late 60s. And even today, they have the 6L35 that they put into, I believe, one model of their Presage line. I feel like any of their more expensive divers, their Prospex divers, deserve that kind of treatment. And why can't we get a signed crown for $1,000? Come on, Seiko. Come on. And Seiko, if you're watching, the bracelet is the low-hanging fruit. So, do you agree with the scoring? Is there anything about the rubric that you think should be improved? Is there any content or watch reviews that you think I should do? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for hanging around to the end. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye, y'all. This jingle jangle piece of trash here. Not a fan of this.